I knew my marriage was over the night my wife looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Like this video and subscribe for more interesting stories. We were sitting across from each other at a restaurant. Soft lights, low music, expensive wine. And in that silence between us, I saw something die. Her name is Lara. The woman who once made my life feel like sunlight. But that night, when I made the worst mistake of my life, I saw the light in her eyes go out. It started with a joke. At least, that's what I told myself. We were having dinner with my friend Julian, who had just flown in from London. Julian was everything I wanted to be: sharp, rich, untouchable. While I was drowning in debt, pretending my business was still afloat. I was desperate, too proud to admit I was failing, too scared to tell Lara the truth. So when Julian joked that he'd pay to spend a night with my wife, I laughed. It was stupid, tasteless. But when I said, "What if you did?" Just once, £800,000, I wasn't laughing anymore. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the whiskey, maybe the pressure, maybe the ugly truth that I'd started to see her as part of the problem instead of my partner. But the second I said it, she froze. Her fork slipped from her hand, her eyes wide, full of hurt and disbelief. The look she gave me, God, I still see it when I close my eyes. She didn't scream, didn't argue. She just went quiet, and that silence hit harder than any slap could. That night, she didn't say a word on the drive home. The rain was tapping on the windshield, her face turned toward the window, and I knew I'd gone too far. But pride is a wicked thing. Instead of apologizing, I convinced myself she was overreacting. I told myself it was just a joke. The truth is, I was scared. Scared she'd see what I'd become. A man who'd lost control of everything and was now losing her too. 2 days later, she started packing her things. I asked her what she was doing, and she said, "Trying to find the woman I used to be before you made me forget her." That line cut deep. But even then, I didn't beg. I didn't stop her, because I didn't know how. When you've broken something you love, sometimes the guilt keeps you frozen. She left quietly. No shouting, no tears. Just walked out of the door like someone who'd already mourned the end. And that was it. 7 years of marriage, gone in a single night. The days after she left were a blur. The house felt like a museum. Empty, echoing, too clean. Her scent still lingered on the pillow. The mug she always used for tea sat on the counter, untouched. I kept thinking she'd come back, that she just needed time to cool off. But deep down, I knew she was done. You don't come back from that kind of betrayal. I tried to distract myself with work. I called clients, pitched projects, told lies about expanding soon. But everything fell apart anyway. The deals, the trust, the mask. Even Julian stopped picking up my calls. The same man who'd lit the match disappeared when the fire started. I should have seen it coming. He was never a friend, just another man who saw my desperation and fed it. One night, I found one of Lara's old notebooks. She used to write poetry, nothing serious, just her thoughts. On one page, she'd written, "Love dies the moment respect leaves the room." I sat there for hours, staring at that line, because that's exactly what happened. I stopped respecting her, and in doing so, I stopped loving her right. Months passed before I reached out. I called her one evening, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the phone. When she answered, her voice was calm, too calm, like she'd already made peace with my absence. I told her I was sorry, that I was losing my mind without her, that I'd give anything to start over. She didn't yell. She just listened. Then she said, "You didn't lose me because of that night, Aaron. You lost me because that night showed me who you really are." It was the gentlest, most devastating thing anyone had ever said to me. A week later, we met at a park. She looked lighter, happier, maybe, or just free. We talked for an hour. I told her about the therapy I'd started, the mistakes I'd been unpacking, the shame that still lived in my chest. She listened, but there was distance in her eyes. A quiet finality that told me she'd already moved on. "I don't hate you," she said softly. "I just don't belong in your story anymore." And that was it. The last thread between us snapped. After that day, I started rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I sold what was left of the business, paid my debts, started freelancing for smaller clients, less money, but honest work. I stopped drinking, started running in the mornings. Therapy helped. Not immediately, but enough to make me face the truth. I wasn't a bad man, just a broken one who refused to admit he was breaking. And I'd made the woman I loved pay the price for it. 6 months later, I heard she'd opened a small studio by the sea, a space for women to tell their stories. I saw a photo of her online, smiling, surrounded by people, paint on her hands. She looked happy, really happy. And for the first time, instead of jealousy, I felt relief. She deserved that kind of peace, the kind I couldn't give her. I wrote her a letter, not to win her back, but to thank her. It said, "Thank you for teaching me what love really means. You were light, and I was the storm that didn't know how to hold it. I hope you keep shining, even if it's without me." I never expected a reply. She didn't send one, and that was okay. Because sometimes silence is the kindest answer. I still wear my wedding ring. Not as a symbol of regret, but as a reminder that love isn't about ownership or pride. It's about protection. And the moment you stop protecting the one you love, you lose the right to call it love. Now, when I walk by the sea on Sunday mornings, I think of her, not with pain, but gratitude, because she taught me that endings don't always mean failure. Some endings are lessons, some are mirrors, and some are the only way for two people to find themselves again. I'm not the same man I was that night. I still make mistakes, but I don't run from them anymore. I face them. I own them. And maybe that's what redemption really looks like. Quiet, slow, and painfully honest. If Laura ever reads this, I hope she knows. I didn't stop loving her when she left. I just learned to love her differently, from afar. In peace. My marriage ended the night I betrayed her trust, but my becoming began the day she walked away. It's strange how quiet life becomes after the noise fades, after the arguments, the explanations, the pleading, all of it. You wake up one day and realize there's no one beside you. No scent of her hair on the pillow, no soft hum of her morning routine. Just silence. That was my life after Laura. Quiet, heavy silence. For weeks, I'd still set 2 mugs out when I made coffee. Still check my phone, expecting a message. Still turn to say something to her, until I remembered she wasn't there anymore. And every time that realization hit, it hurt like the first night she left. The first few months were brutal, not because she was gone, but because of what her leaving revealed about me. I had spent years pretending I was fine, pretending my ambition justified everything, my temper, my pride, my neglect. But when you lose everything, you start seeing yourself without the filters. And what I saw wasn't a man. It was a boy wearing a man's mask. One who thought control was the same thing as strength. Therapy became my lifeline, not some miracle cure, just a mirror that refused to lie. The therapist, an old man named Harvey, used to sit back and listen quietly while I unraveled. Then one day he said, "You didn't lose your wife the night you hurt her. You lost her the day you stopped listening." That line stayed with me. Because he was right. I stopped chasing women after Lara left. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. Every woman I met reminded me of her. How she used to laugh with her whole body. How she'd cover her mouth when embarrassed. How she always found beauty in ordinary things. No one else felt right. So I started focusing on myself. Work, fitness, reading, silence. I learned to enjoy being alone, and that, for a man like me, was terrifying and freeing at the same time. One evening, about a year after she left, I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I was walking near the coast, where she used to love taking photos of sunsets, and there she was, sitting on a bench, sketchbook in hand. She looked peaceful, not the fragile kind of peace that breaks when you blink, but the real one, the kind that comes after war. I almost turned away, but she looked up and saw me. Our eyes met, and in that split second, the air changed. Not awkward, just still. She smiled. Softly. "Hi, Aaron." I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I shoved them in my pockets like an idiot. She asked how I was. I told her I was fine, working, healing, living quietly. Then I asked about her. She told me about her studio, her workshops, the women she helped find their voices again. Her eyes lit up when she talked. I'd forgotten how much I loved seeing that. I wanted to tell her she looked beautiful, that I was proud of her, that I missed her, but I didn't. Some words are better left unsaid when love no longer belongs to you. Before leaving, she said, "I'm glad you're doing better." And that was it. No bitterness, no tears, just two people who once broke each other, finally standing in peace. After that encounter, something shifted in me. For the first time in years, I felt light. Because forgiveness, hers or mine, I don't even know which, had finally settled. I started writing again. Nothing serious, just thoughts, reflections, about mistakes, love, men like me who learn lessons too late. I posted one online, titled "The Day I Stopped Deserving Her." It went viral overnight. Thousands of people, mostly men, messaged me saying, "This is me. This is what I did. This is what I'm afraid to admit." And that's when I realized my pain could mean something if I didn't hide it. Months passed. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. It was from Lara. She'd read the piece. Her message was short. "That took courage. I'm glad you found your voice. Keep going." I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. That was her way of saying she'd forgiven me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things don't need closure when the peace is mutual. A year later, I met someone new. Her name was Elise. She wasn't like Lara. She didn't try to fill the space Lara left. She built something new beside it. She knew my story. I told her everything early on, every mistake, every failure. I didn't want to hide. And she said something I'll never forget. You can't love someone right until you've forgiven yourself for how you loved wrong. That was it. That was the final piece I'd been missing. Being with Elise felt different. Calm, safe, real. No competition, no ego. No pretending. She didn't need me to prove anything. She just needed me to show up. And for once, I did. I learned to listen more than I spoke. To apologize without excuses. To love softly, without possession. or pride. And though a part of me will always carry Laura's memory, it's not a wound anymore. It's a lesson. I still write. Sometimes about love. Sometimes about loss. Mostly about men learning to be better. My readers often ask, would you take her back if you could? And I always answer the same way. No, because she already gave me everything I needed. Growth. Laura was the turning point in my life. The woman who broke me open just enough to let the light in. Every year, on the anniversary of our divorce, I walk by the same sea where I last saw her. I stand there for a while, listening to the waves. And I whisper, thank you. For leaving when I didn't have the courage to change. Because that's the truth. Her leaving didn't destroy me, it saved me. Looking back now, I see how it all fits. The love, the failure, the regret, the growth. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some end with revelation. I didn't get my marriage back, but I got myself back. And maybe that's what love was trying to teach me all along. My marriage ended when I failed to honor her. But my manhood began the day I finally learned how to love without breaking what I hold. It's been 5 years now. 5 long, quiet, strangely beautiful years since everything fell apart. I don't measure time the way I used to. Back then, every day felt like a deadline, something to conquer, to win. Now, it feels like a gift I'm just learning how to hold gently. Laura and I haven't spoken in almost a year. Not out of anger, just life doing what it does, moving forward. She's remarried now. I heard from a mutual friend. And when I saw the wedding photos online, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt peace. Real peace. She looked radiant, standing there in that ivory dress, the same calm glow I used to wake up beside. The man beside her looked grounded, kind, the way I should have been. And you know what? I smiled. Because someone finally learned to love her the way I couldn't. Elise and I are still together. We live in a small house just outside the city, where the nights are quiet and the mornings start with laughter. She paints in the living room while I write by the window. Sometimes she hums to herself, and it fills the space in a way that feels like home. She never tries to erase my past, never flinches when I talk about Laura. That kind of security, of knowing you can be fully known and still fully loved, it's something I never thought I'd earn. I tell her everything. The nights I still dream about the mistakes I made. The guilt that sometimes sneaks back in when I least expect it. And she listens, not to fix me, but to remind me I'm not that man anymore. Last week, I got invited to speak at a seminar about emotional growth in men. The topic? Accountability and healing after failure. 5 years ago, I would have laughed at the irony. Now, I see the poetry in it. Standing on that stage, looking out at a room full of men who were all trying to do better, I realized something. Pain doesn't lose its meaning when it stops hurting. It just transforms. I talked about Lara, about losing her, breaking her trust, and finding myself in the ruins. I told them healing isn't about erasing your past. It's about owning it so it no longer owns you. When I finished, a man in the back stood up, tears in his eyes, and said, "I thought I was the only one." That moment, that's when I knew everything I went through had purpose. Sometimes I still go back to the sea. Not to grieve, but to remember. The wind feels softer now. The waves sound less like endings and more like beginnings. I whisper the same words every time. Thank you, Laura. You taught me what love costs and what it's worth. And then I turn, hand in hand with Elise. ready to keep living the life I almost lost. I broke the woman I loved, but she built the man I became. And for that, I'll spend the rest of my life loving better.